On today's Locked On Giants podcast, with the NFL trade deadline fast approaching, a look at whether the Giants should be buyers or sellers.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. And we thank you, as always, for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. All right, Giant fans, on today's episode, the trade deadline is next week, November 4th. So we're going to take a look at, should the Giants be buyers or sellers at the trade deadline? So in segment one, we're going to take a look at the reasons why, as well as the reasons why they shouldn't be buyers. We're going to do the same thing in segment two. Should they be sellers or should they hold their water? Then in segment three, I took a look because a lot of you have asked me about the salary cap for 2026. And you've said, what's the status? Folks, it's not that great. So I took a look at some very early possible salary cap moves the Giants will make, what I think they will make, what I think makes sense. So we'll take a look at that in segment three. So that's our list of topics for today. Again, welcome on in. All right. The number one reason the Giants should be buyers is get a playmaker in here for Jackson Dart to continue his development. All right. He's without Malik Neighbors, as we know. He just lost Cam Scatterbo, as we know. And a lot of you have said, well, what's he got to work with? He's got a bunch of practice squad receivers. So I pulled up True Media and I took a look at how the receivers are actually doing. I took a look at how Dart is actually doing in his development and if it's been stunted so far, despite not having Malik Neighbors. Here's what I found. Entering week 8, according to NFL Plus, Dart has 8 first downs, which is tied for first in the league, with a 12.8 EPA on scrambles that he's run since week 4. All right, so that's the rushing end of it. But let's look now at the passing end of it. All right, Dart so far versus the league average per True Media, he has run 202 plays, has 12 touchdowns, which is more than the 9.6 league average amongst quarterbacks. He has a 59.9% completion rate, which is below the league completion rate average of 65.7%. He is averaging 6.9 yards per attempt, which is below the 7.1 average for the league. His rushing yards are 43 yards, above the league average of 22.3 for quarterbacks. Interceptions, he has 3, which is slightly below the league average of 3.5. Sacks, he's taken 17 sacks. That's higher than the 12.8 league average. Blame that on holding the ball a little too long. Turnovers, he has 4 turnovers, which is a little less than the 4.5 league average for quarterbacks. He's got 63 first downs, which is slightly underneath the league average, 66.8. And I mentioned the rushing yards. He's done 16 scrambles for 121 yards, which is above the league average of 11.1 scrambles per quarterback and 86.6 rushing yards. Now, here's the thing about being a buyer in this case. A legitimately good wide receiver is going to cost the Giants. I highly doubt they're going to get a good receiver for a day 3 pick. Keep in mind, the Giants have already traded away their 3rd round pick next year to get Jackson Dart, which means if a team had a really good receiver and they wanted to make a deal, they probably would want a day 2 pick. Well, the Giants don't have a 3rd round pick next year. All they have is a 2nd round. Is it really worth it given how the season is going, knowing that next year you're going to get Malik Neighbors back? At some point, you're going to get Scatterboo back. That you're going to have the draft to add to your arsenal. Is it really worth it to give up a 2nd round pick, which is what it's probably going to cost you to get a top-notch receiver? I don't think it is. I don't think Joe Schoen, if he is back next year, I don't think he trades away a 2nd round pick because now he has no day 2 picks. He's not doing that. I'm telling you right now, he's not doing that if he's back. I'm telling you, if a new GM comes in, were to come in at, say, even at the end of this year, which I don't think is going to happen, he wouldn't make that move. All right. He would not endorse it. So I do not think a receiver is going to be brought in. I understand the logic that you want to give Dart as many weapons as you can. You want to advance his development. I don't think it's going to happen. I would be very, very surprised if it does. So I took a look at what the Giant receivers have done thus far since Jackson Dart took over as starting quarterback. Per True Media, here's what we've got. The Giants receivers have caught 1,770 yards, which is 11th in the league. They are averaging 11.7 yards per catch, which is 8th in the league. They have 829 yards after catch, which is 13th. That yards after the catch average is 5.5. Okay, so not too bad. The average air yards per pass target is 9.19, which is 2nd in the league. They have 12 drops to receiving targets, which is tied for 7th most. Okay, that's got to get cleaned up, obviously. They have, on first downs or touchdowns, 141 so far, which is greater than the league average of 131.4. Okay, so basically, no, the Giants don't have any big names at receiver. And yes, there are times when you watch and those receivers are not getting open. But according to the stats, the receivers haven't been that bad. So if you're Joe Schoen and you really needed to add a piece to this team, and quite honestly, again, with the team 2-6 for the 3rd time in a row, if you're going to add anything, maybe you add something on the defensive side at cornerback or somebody to stop the run, at linebacker, because they've got some problems over there. I would be very, very surprised if they add a receiver. I just don't see it happening. I don't know that it makes sense, even though I understand the logic. And it is what it is. I think if the Giants were, at this point, if they were 6-2, then you make that, then it's a different story. It's not going to happen. I'd be very surprised if it happens. All right. Coming up next, should the Giants be sellers? I think they should. And I'm going to tell you why right after this.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go, while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And just real quick, I know some of you have asked me about Cam Scattaboo. He was released from the hospital earlier on Monday. Long road ahead as far as his recovery goes, but from what I understand, he's in good spirits. He's anxious to get back. So I think he's going to work really hard to get back, make sure he's ready for next year. And just best wishes to that young man. Really, I hated to see that injury. You hate to see any injury, but that one in particular really hurt, probably as much as the Malik Neighbors injury hurt. And just think, if Scattaboo can come back, and from what information I've been able to gather so far, it is a long recovery. But you know what? I almost think back to Rich Seibert back in the day when Rich Seibert broke his leg. He suffered a spiral fracture, incidentally, against the Eagles, I might add. And I didn't think Rich Seibert was going to come back. I knew he had to undergo multiple surgeries. He was having a tough time of it. But through sheer will and determination, he worked his way back, and he landed up with a Super Bowl ring. So let's hope that the same is in store for Cam Scattaboo. Get well, big guy, if you're out there listening. If any of your family members are out there listening, best wishes to Cam Scattaboo. All right, Giant fans. In this segment, why the Giants should be sellers at the trade deadline. For the simple reason, they need cap space. Now, the Giants, and I'm going to talk about this more in segment 3, but at the moment, according to Over the Cap, the Giants have $4.923 million in cap space for this year. Here's my thinking. If you're not going to play Evan Neal and you're not going to play Jalin Hyatt, if they're not in your long-term plans, why are they on the roster? It makes no sense. Why not see if you can't move these two kids and get something in return? And I would say the same thing about Russell Wilson. See if you can't move him and get something in return. All right, now let's go one guy at a time here. Minnesota needs a quarterback. All right, JJ McCarthy is still recovering from a high ankle sprain. Carson Wentz is to have season-ending shoulder surgery, I believe. Minnesota needs a quarterback. So you mean to tell me that the Giants can't send Russell Wilson out there for a draft pick? I mean, look, ultimately, by 2026, the plan is supposedly going to be Dart as the starter, Jameis Winston as quarterback 2. Why delay the inevitable? You were supposed to let Jackson Dart sit the entire year, and you decided to flip the switch. So why not just trade Russell Wilson to a place where he can go and play and put Jameis Winston as your quarterback 2, and then maybe you sign a developmental quarterback for your practice squad? Doesn't that make sense? I think it does, but I don't think the Giants will do that. They like Russell Wilson. They like the effect, the influence he has in the locker room. Russell Wilson likes it here. So, hey, who cares if, we have an opportunity to move him and save a few bucks and on the salary cap and get a draft pick in return, even though next year they're not due to get any comp picks. I mean, if he's not in the long-term plans, why keep him? It makes no sense. Same thing. Now, the only thing I can think of, the only reason why I think they are keeping him and Winston, Jackson Dart plays a little bit on the reckless side. So perhaps there's a concern that at some point he's going to get hurt, and better we have 2 quarterbacks than none. If that's the reason, folks, It's not a really good reason, in my opinion. If, heaven forbid, Dart gets hurt, you plug Winston in there. Winston is probably closer to having Dart's skill sets, although not as good or not as promising than Wilson is. So don't use that as, the fear of an injury as an excuse not to see if you can't get something for Russell Wilson. I don't think the Giants will do it, but I would if I were the GM. All right, now let's talk about Evan Neal. Evan Neal has yet to get a game day uniform. The conversion to guard did not work out. We know that he's not going to be a viable option at tackle. See if you can't move him to a team that can use an offensive lineman if you're not going to play him. The Texans need an offensive lineman. The Chargers need an offensive lineman. I'm sure there's other teams that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head that need offensive line help. If Evan Neal is not in your plans for the long-term future, and it's pretty clear he's not, why continue developing him? Couldn't you use that time to develop other guys on the roster? Marcus Bowe, whatever other guys you've got on the practice squad. Doesn't that make more sense? And who knows, maybe you can get a day 2, like a 3rd round pick, or maybe even a high day 3 pick for Evan Neal. You never know. Maybe a fresh start is what he needs. Why continue to carry him if you're not going to play him? All right, same thing with Jalin Hyatt. Jalin Hyatt against the Eagles was a healthy scratch. Jalin Hyatt has not gotten a lot of opportunities. And when he hasn't made a whole lot of them. So much so that, the Giants have promoted Lil Jordan Humphrey ahead of Hyatt. Bo Collins has had opportunities ahead of Hyatt, an undrafted free agent over a 3rd round pick that you traded up to get. See if he can't move Hyatt. Maybe he benefits from a fresh start, and maybe you get a draft pick. You start stockpiling those later draft picks that you can use to package to move up if you need to. I mean, it makes too much sense, I would think. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm all wrong about this. But I don't see the point in holding on to picks, draft picks. And I get it. Evan Neal was a 1st rounder. Hyatt, they traded up to get. But admit you made a mistake, cut your losses, and get something for these guys. Because here's what's going to happen. Evan Neal's going to walk away next year, going to sign a contract with some team. I don't know necessarily it's going to be a hefty contract to where it's going to bring a huge comp pick in terms of the draft order. Why not see if you can't get your price now for him? And the same thing with Hyatt. If he's not in the plans, move him. Don't rely on getting comp picks for if these guys walk away and sign elsewhere, because you can't use those comp picks until the following year. You need help now. You need defensive secondary help. You're going to need linebacker help. You're probably going to want to add another receiver. Don't put it off for 2 years. Make the moves now. And, oh, by the way, let's talk about the cap savings, okay? So the Giants, they have $4.923 million in cap space as of this recording, that per over the cap. Now, for those of you who wanted to know what do they have in 2026, asterisk here, it's fluid. It's going to change, but as of right now, the Giants have $16.048 million in space for 2026. And here's the kicker, folks. In terms of effective cap space, which is the cap space they need to sign 51 guys, for the top 51 rule that kicks in on the first day of the league year, the Giants are currently in the red by $862,303. So their cap situation next year ain't that pretty. So what could they save if they move Russell Wilson and Evan Neal and Jalin Hyatt? Well, I broke it down per week. So what you want to do is you want to take the numbers that I'm giving you, multiply them by the number of weeks remaining in the regular season. So Russell Wilson, $117,647 per week. Evan Neal, $64,705 per week. Jalin Hyatt, $71,258 per week. All right. Plus, with Jalin Hyatt, you move him, you save $1.517 million in 2026 since he is still under contract. Now, it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it adds up. And it's kind of like free money that you can get to help boost your 2026 cap situation. Will the Giants do it? I don't know. I would. Makes too much sense. But I'm not paid to make that decision. That's Joe Shane's decision. And right now, the cap situation, not very promising because the cap space they have next year, I guarantee you that's going to go quickly. And oh, by the way, some of the guys that are coming up that they would have to re-sign if they wanted to, Jermaine Illuminor, who's going to want a big payday, Micah McFadden, who they might be able to get back on a cheap contract given his injury status. Cordell Flott is up for a new contract. Maybe Daniel Bellinger is up for a new contract, whether you want him back or not. Wan'Dale Robinson is up for a new contract. So you got a bunch of guys who are up for new deals after this season. You're not going to sign them all. You're not going to be able to. You know, if you lose Jermaine Illuminor, okay, you plug in Marcus Bowe. Fine. If you lose Wan'Dale Robinson, okay, maybe you draft a receiver. You're going to draft a receiver anyway. If you lose Cordell Flott, well, now you need a cornerback because Cordell Flott's been playing very well. Daniel Bellinger is a solid tight end too, probably a better pass catcher than Theo Johnson right now. Do you really want to let him go? So yeah, if you can start saving money towards next year's cap, why wouldn't you? All right, Giant fans, speaking of money, we're going to take a look at some other very early cap moves the Giants can make next year to start getting themselves into position if they want to make some moves in free agency. So that's coming up right after this.
Today's episode of Locked on Giants is brought to you by our friends over at Rougiette. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard it before. It's just stress. I'm tired. It happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougiette makes it so easy to get started. Just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, and no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment shipped discreetly straight to your door. So visit rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL to get 15% off of your first order. That's rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL. And don't forget to use that promo code LockedOnNFL so that they know that we sent you. Rougiette. Stop making excuses and start making moves.
Hey, Giant fans, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So go on, head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And we started to talk a little bit about the salary cap for 2026. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. What some very early moves that I think the Giants will look to make. Now, it was interesting because this past year, the Giants didn't trim anybody from their roster. I thought they would maybe look to do something with Graham Gano's contract. I didn't think, Joaquin Nunes Roches would make it without being a cap casualty. And the Giants did nothing. Next year, they can't afford to do nothing. Regardless of who's running the show, they cannot afford to do nothing. So here's a look at some guys that I think they will look to either restructure or move off the roster altogether. I'm going to start with James Hudson III. James Hudson III was brought in as the swing tackle. He has been passed on the depth chart by Marcus Bowe. Hudson has a base salary, or a cap hit, I should say. Hudson would save the Giants $5.5 million if he was not on the roster. That should be a no-brainer. Devin Singletary. Now, this one, I'm not sure if the Giants will make this move only because of the Scadaboo injury. In the event Scadaboo is not ready, I suspect if the same regime comes back next year, they'll want to keep Motor. Okay, but if they didn't, they would save themselves $5.25 million. Graham Gano. No way he's on this roster next year. If he's gone, it's a $4.5 million cap savings. Good guy, good kicker when healthy, but he's been hurt 3 years in a row. And even though he got through, the Week 8 game against the Eagles, there's no guarantee that he's going to make it through the rest of the season. So you just can't take that chance. Not to mention now, he's no longer kicking off. They're having Jamie Gillen do it. So there's no need to be carrying a kicker with that high of a cap hit. Another guy who could possibly be on the bubble for the cap casualties next year, Jon Runyan Jr. He has a $9.2 million cap savings if he is not on the roster. I would almost rather they re-sign Aaron Stinney to another one-year deal for far less than Jon Runyan Jr., who just, I don't know if it's because his shoulder is still an issue, the shoulder that he had last year, or what's going on. But Jon Runyan Jr., just something's missing from his game. And if you remember from the Hard Knocks episode, they had to actually overpay to get Jon Runyan Jr. because they were that desperate for help on the offensive line. One other guy I'm going to mention, and I don't know that they'll move him. I would be surprised if they move him. Maybe they look to do something with him as far as his contract goes, because if they were to move him, he would save them $9 million. And that's inside linebacker Bobby Okereke. And I say I'm hesitating on Okereke only because Micah McFadden may or may not be back next year, depending on, what happens in free agency. Now I think it is possible the Giants can get McFadden back on a reduced rate since he is coming off injury. But it's not a slam dunk. Darius Muwaso, good kid, not a very, effective linebacker. Linebacker is going to be a high need for the Giants next year. Any way you cut it, it's going to be a top need. Do they bring back Okereke, who's under contract? I could see it happening. I would say of the guys that I just gave you, Okereke probably is the one guy that his chances of being a cap casualty are the lowest. But, again, it depends on how the rest of the year plays out. It depends on how the free agent market shapes up, how the draft class shapes up. But there's no doubt in my mind, the Giants got to get better linebackers. I'm talking inside linebackers, not necessarily the edge rushers. So, yeah, a lot of work still to be done on this roster. Just when you think The roster looks good. Just when you think on paper it's, one of the best rosters of the current regime's era, stuff happens. And here we are at 2-6, and the season pretty much over, on target, right on schedule, right before Halloween. But we will continue to bring you content here on Locked On Giants, as well as over on New York Giants on SI. I've got some cool stuff coming up over there that I hope you will check out. And folks, I know it's hard. I know a lot of you are disgusted. I'm disgusted too. If you saw my show yesterday, I brought the smoke because I was really angry with what I had seen. But please consider staying here because I'm going to try and mix things up as far as show topics and features and guests and all that stuff so that we have a little variety here on the Locked On Giants podcast. All right, Giant fans, before we say goodbye, as always, we thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. For your next listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler the Madman Rowland gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, I will see you tomorrow. Have a good one, and we'll see you soon.